What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So Micah Parsons delivered some very interesting comments about Zach Wilson and what he thinks the New York Jets should be doing with him. And I found this particularly interesting because of the recent experience we've had with Micah Parsons and, of course, the quality of player he is. We're talking about, for one, him coming from the same draft class as Zach Wilson back in 2021. And you'd imagine you're definitely paying attention to guys that were picked ahead of you, let alone he had the game plan and execute, and he did it very effectively against Zach Wilson just 2 weeks ago. He did this, by the way, on his Bleacher Report web series, The Edge with Micah Parsons. But ultimately, you're talking about a guy here that Aaron Donald is, I would say almost unanimously regarded as the best defensive player in the NFL, generally speaking by a wide margin. I would argue Micah Parsons is probably that guy that takes the mantle from an Aaron Donald when he decides to retire. He's been that vicious, that elite, that consistent, that dominant from not only multiple positions, but multiple alignments with how they can utilize him. I mean, you can basically play anything that you want for him in that front seven, and you can do it at an elite level, which is generally unheard of, right? So, factoring into that he's also probably a dark horse candidate to be MVP as a defensive player and not generally sniffing the same ballpark as guys like quarterbacks and wide receivers when it comes to obtaining that piece of hardware. I find it noteworthy and worth paying extra attention to what he's mentioning. So during this web series, he mentioned the fact that, and it's about a 3-minute and 40-something video. The main quotables, though, were, this isn't a walk-in-the-park job. There are only 32 starting jobs in the NFL for a reason. Defensive ends, you can be rotatable. Quarterback is one of the hardest positions in the NFL, and you expect a third-year guy who got benched last year. His team needs to give him back. His team needs to get back to him and pour into him so he can be the guy they want him to be. And if they can't, there's a bunch of free agents. So some of the context around those quotables, right? Him mentioning how hard the quarterback position is. It's only 32 starting jobs in the NFL, as he says. We know it's the hardest position to translate success to from the college ranks to the professional level. Guys that have had spectacular win-to-loss ratios in college have gone out here and suffered terribly at the NFL level, and whether that's due to coaching, lack of motivation, the skill set that they've had, a terrible marriage between team and player, whatever the case is. We've seen them struggle. We know how hard it is. That's why we look at guys like the Aaron Rodgers, the Patrick Mahomes, the Tom Brady's, Lamar Jackson, his MVP season, the Justin Herberts. These guys that we're seeing do it at an elite level, and generally what tips them over the iceberg from good and great players is the consistency that they're doing it with. Seeing them break records for multiple touchdowns, passing yardage, rushing yards, consecutive passes that they've thrown before a drop or something like that comes into play. Spectacular. Consistency is everything in the NFL. We know the opposite, right? We've had the terrible quarterback play for so long. We know when a guy has it or when they don't, generally before that first season finishes, right? We know what we feel really, really good about. We know what we feel terrible about. We generally have a great idea of what the coaching staff can do to help fix that. Very, very smart fan base that we have, right? We know the likes of guys like Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Christian Hackenberg, if anybody remembers that, right? I had an argument before that. I don't know who's worse between the two of them, as another high selection, second round for what it's worth. And then, of course, Mark Sanchez as our last somewhat successful quarterback, at least consistently in the playoffs. Zach Wilson doesn't seem to be the guy that has that ability to not only be elite or great, but he doesn't seem to have the makeup to even be a quality NFL, starter. This is a guy that when you compare him to backups, he doesn't rank favorably. So, hearing the comments from Micah Parsons that the New York Jets need to give back to him, pour into him, turn him into the guy that they want him to be. He mentioned his third-year status and him being benched in year 2. It's interesting to me how relatively little guys on the outside looking in aren't aware of all of the things that we've done to try to pour into Zach Wilson. If you're not a part of this New York Jets franchise, if you're not a part of the fandom, generally seems like they're making kind of aloof, very generic comments. Zach Wilson has had the best job done to try to develop him from a personnel standpoint, 53-man roster wise, that any quarterback in the last 10 to 15 years has had from a New York Jets, GM and, ownership level. Garrett Wilson, pretty much a widely regarded number one wide receiver in the NFL. You have a tight end room that looks pretty solid and complete from number one to number three. You even had guys that you could have called up or felt very good in, and guys like Kenny Yeboah, Lawrence Cager, who, got picked up elsewhere, E.J. Jenkins. We still feel very excited about what Zach Kuntz can be. Very, very, well done job that we have, and we all love Ron Middleton. You take a look at the running back room. Breece Hall, probably going to be regarded as a top 3 running back in the NFL before it was all said and done when his rookie contract was up. Dalvin Cook, for what he was worth prior to what we've seen these last 3 weeks, was regarded as one of the best running backs in the NFL with what he's done the last 4 years. And then an offensive line that's not fully complete, but it has interesting pieces. All pro caliber, I'll just call him offensive line member, and Elijah Vera Tucker. Mekhi Becton, your most intriguing piece from a physical standpoint. You just hope he can stay on the field. And then we have our new young gunner in the center that we hope replace Connor McGovern and has a high level of success, but has versatility, being able to play center and guard. Zach Wilson has a great supporting cast, let alone an excellent defense that's behind him, and he's not able to get the job done at a level that we feel is great, right? So even on a macro level, it's weird hearing Micah Parsons saying that, it's not kind of what he's saying, is what the lack of it kind of says to me, that we haven't necessarily poured into him. It's almost like somebody has tapped into being a Jets fan and they've washed away the first 2 years under Mike LaFleur, and they're kind of starting him over as a rookie again, right? He cited this New York Jets team fully embracing Aaron Rodgers, getting behind him. This playbook is specifically intended for Aaron Rodgers. We find it a little bit weird because Zach Wilson's still supposed to be your future. Why can't he operate this playbook? And I don't think that's the problem. It's not that he can't operate this playbook. He can't operate any playbook. We haven't seen him have consistent success with anything the New York Jets have tried to do. And I don't think it's purely a New York Jets issue, right? Mike LaFleur, a lot of us crapped on him. He did have some huge red flags with him, but it still can't be swept under the rug. Mike White, Joe Flacco, Chris Streveler all came in, seeing tremendous success in this New York Jets offense without some of the pieces we have now, by the way, when Zach Wilson couldn't. Completely different kind of organization when any of those 3 guys were running this team. And I think that gives you everything you need to know about Zach Wilson. Could he potentially still be good or great and kind of follow a Geno Smith type route? Maybe. For what it's worth, though, we think this is the coaching staff that could and should have got that done, right? Nathaniel Hackett, we've seen what he's done with guys like Blake Bortles and, E.J. Manuel and some of these other guys that he's been around that, again, probably weren't general quality NFL starters at the quarterback position, but he's led them to some very acceptable stats and performance out there to get his teams in winning positions. You feel good about Todd Downing and what he's been able to do working with guys like Derek Carr and Ryan Tannehill to turn their careers around. So, it's not for a lack of effort by any means with this New York Jets franchise. I think that we've done just that. Has he had the time? No. It's a new coaching staff. On the offensive side, you can say that Mike LaFleur maybe wrecked Zach Wilson the first 2 years. It is what it is. But the general expectation was, and the game plan is, that Zach Wilson should have never saw the field this year. That should have been the intent this whole time. So, if anything, I would probably lean more heavily into Micah Parsons' ending comments about getting a free agent guy, which, we picked up Trevor Siemian, but you should have got somebody that could have ran that offense behind Aaron Rodgers. Regardless of the optics, make Zach Wilson your number 3. He can go out there and prove himself in his 4th and 5th year in the NFL once Aaron Rodgers has tried to go out there and accomplish whatever it is he wants to accomplish. But at that point, at least you're giving him a year, 2 years of work to undo what's been done in the first place. I don't know. I will say the New York Jets have definitely tried to explore every avenue they can with a guy like Zach Wilson, which is impressive considering Robert Saleh's background as a defensive guy. We've seen every other defensive guy that we've had kind of stray away from that side of the ball, revamp them with guys that they know and are familiar with, rather than guys that actually have, impressive enough resumes. So I don't know kind of how I feel about this, right? Again, it's not a full supportive statement from Micah Parsons that he thinks Zach Wilson's the guy and the New York Jets are going about this wrong. It's more so generic and a general air of, yes, I think Zach Wilson can still be great. The New York Jets need to continue to do what they are currently doing, which, at least by Robert Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett's admission, is exactly what they plan to do. But you also need to understand when enough is enough, right? Either go back to your original plan A, relegate him to relegate him back to the bench permanently, put him in the shadow realm, do what you need to do, just don't let him see the field. Or you double down and you deal with the consequences. It's year 3. You already have Woody Johnson that's made comments before that he thought the quarterback position was really the last upgraded piece that we needed. So you have to imagine he was already feeling some way about what he's been seeing out of Zach Wilson. Writing's kind of on the wall here, I feel like, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Nonetheless, still interesting to hear what Micah Parsons said. Again, I'll drop the link in the description for you guys so you can check out the 3-minute, 40-some second video that he had about it. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are here. And, he's not the, I dropped the Eli Manning video. Obviously, there's some support that's out there for Zach Wilson, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you again. Peace.